Hello everyone, this is Strizer86 and thanks for checking out my Castlevania Chronicles original mode TAS. In this commentary, I'll cover details that may be easily missed when watching. If you'd like further details, I will also link the TASvideos submission in the description below and a no commentary version as well. Enjoy! So as we get into the first block, I'll cover the main reasons for use of the JP release over an international release. The cross hitbox is larger, which is mainly used for a quicker boss kill in block 3, but does impact other strats as well. Additionally, there is a Medusa iframe bug that will be exploited in block 4, but I will cover these situations in greater detail once we reach them. Welcome to Castlevania Chronicles, the much lesser known PlayStation release. It's a linear game and remake of a sharp X68000 Japanese only title simply called Castlevania. Included are two modes, original and arranged. Arranged offers the players options like turning off the timer and a 3-frame window to jump after walking off a ledge. The same luxury isn't provided in original mode, meaning we are subject to timer countdown at the end of stages and the jumps are actually much tighter. Original mode also has typical knockback, which will be used for the purpose of multiple time saves not available in arranged mode, where Simon simply gets knocked upwards. Jumping loses 2 frames of horizontal movement, so it will be minimized throughout the run. This first block is optimized simply by killing certain enemies while avoiding others to minimize spawns, meaning less jumps. The dagger on the third panther is thrown at a specific time to prevent the second one from coming back on screen to attack you, saving an additional jump. All of these strats are RTA viable, as the window to impact enemy spawns is fairly large, and I actually discovered the despawn of the second panther while playing casually. Here we pick up the stopwatch for the purpose of saving time on the upcoming boss. Fun side note discovered while I was researching drop RNG, the mermen in this area impact the drop RNG every frame but only while in the swimming animation, meaning the stopwatch prevents this. The drop table as a whole will be relevant, so I will touch on it again in block 2, but for complete details of my findings, be sure to check out the submission notes. Stairs are another non-obvious spot where time can be lost. Although pressing up will pull Simon towards the stairs and up them from a certain distance away, it does so at the slower climbing speed. This means the player can lose up to 10 frames per staircase when up is pressed too early. This can be avoided by getting as close to the stairs as possible with left or right before pressing up. Time is also lost if Simon has to turn around to start the climb. As a result, care was taken to ensure every frame was saved when climbing stairs. This will be the only boss where the cross isn't used. Normally when struck, the bat boss will split into smaller bats and take time to reform, preventing additional hits. The stopwatch is used to freeze him in place, allowing the boss to be killed without ever splitting. This quick kill is the one used in RTA runs, simply optimized, and the only case where the TAS and RTA runs will share boss strats. Here we see the first of 7 timer countdowns post-boss fight. About 1 minute and 17 seconds are lost to timer countdown throughout the entire run, which is the reason original mode is slower compared to arranged. That in mind, when just focusing on the points that require player execution and input, original mode easily comes out as the faster mode between the two due to the damage boost you'll see throughout the run. In block 2, you will see the fruits of my labor when it comes to RNG research, the forced cross drop. Like the swimming merman in block 1, the green goo changes the drop RNG every frame when nearby. This effectively allows me to farm whatever I want from the bats by killing them on a particular frame. The older arrange mode TAS and RTA runs would typically use the stopwatch at the start of this block, grab the dagger along the way, and finally the first cross via a candle just prior to the boss. Cross in hand, we use the other piece of Chronicles tech, which I call sub-weapon storage for sake of ease. This is done by cancelling a downward or diagonal down whip attack by landing. Unlike a normal whip attack which locks Simon in place upon landing, a downward attack gets cancelled. This not only loses no time on landing, but the amount of frames left in the cancelled animation will be the number of frames Simon is locked in place for the next sub-weapon throw. In short, if there's 1 frame left in the downward whip animation when you land, you only remain frozen in place for 1 frame next time you use your sub-weapon. This is going to be crucial for the rest of the run and will be used essentially everywhere. In addition to being able to move using this technique, Simon can also turn around or start a jump. A sub-weapon always travels the direction Simon was facing on the frame it was used. This means we can turn around for a single frame, initiate the throw, then turn back around and continue, effectively throwing the sub-weapon behind us with minimal time loss. Although you would think the early cross would be a huge time save on the upcoming boss, it actually only saves 2/3 of a second. 23 frames are lost to the early cross grab and farming of the triple. This is a combination of 1 frame cross throws and lag due to the enemies and music, which is not normally present when you have the stopwatch. The time is made up on the fight where 64 frames are saved because I can kill him in 3 damage stacks opposed to 4. So what is a damage stack, and how does it save time? If you're familiar with Super Castlevania 4 runs, you've seen runners do this technique on Slobber Up. If multiple damage sources are overlaid on a boss's hitbox when they become vulnerable, either initially or when recovering from an attack, they will take damage from all of the sources simultaneously. This is the technique that will be used on all of the bosses for the rest of this run. While recent RTA setups have been found to do double damage stacks on the Block 2 boss, this task will be focusing on killing every boss starting with a quad stack and following up with as few hits as possible to finish. The quad stack is achieved by use of 3 crosses with the addition of the whip. Some bosses can be done in 3 stacks, consisting of a quad stack, followed by 2 double stacks while keeping them in iframes. That said, there are a few variations used and special cases, so not every boss kill is alike. Like many other classic Castlevania titles, you want to be sure to end each stage with no hearts to prevent time loss. Because of this, you will see me toss any remaining sub-weapons before I grab the boss orb. We get more than enough extra content thanks to the timer. Coming into Block 3, it's a good time to touch on enemy hitboxes and how you can pass through them without taking damage, if done correctly. When enemies are damaged, their hitbox becomes inactive momentarily, which allows Simon to pass through unharmed. While this is not typically enough to get through an entire enemy hitbox, it can be made useful by first jumping over part of the enemy before the damage, or jumping out of the enemy hitbox before it becomes active again. This was seen a moment ago with the second tree enemy, and will be seen later with the archer statues. This tech is something you'll see in later blocks as well with the bone pillars and at various points throughout the run. Like Block 1, this section mainly consists of minimizing jumps, while dealing with the always dreadful fleamen. This is done via a combination of killing certain ones at certain times to impact upcoming spawns and a backwards cross throw to finish. While we are taking in more of the same tech, I will give you guys a moment to enjoy the soundtrack, which differs greatly from the arranged mode version. Upon launch, the player gets to pick from 3 different sound modules: the X68000's FM synthesizer, MIDI Roland LA, or MIDI Roland GS, which impacts the instrumentation and arrangement. Heading into the frog section, I was sure to mind my platforms. A small time was spent on the platform moving towards me for the benefit of spending more time on the platform above that is moving away. When Simon jumps from a high place, it results in the fall stun animation. While this can't be totally avoided in all cases, it can be minimized by carefully planning out your jumps along the way. While the mud in this section pulls you down, it doesn't slow your walk speed, meaning the only penalty is the jumps taken to keep from sinking. What game would be complete without an obligatory ice section? A quick whip down gets me through the ice. Worth noting, if the player doesn't happen to notice the different colored blocks, they will eventually shatter on their own over time, revealing the way down. The focus here, aside from avoiding the unleashed fleamen, is spending as much time on the downward slopes as possible to gain speed, and avoiding the upward ones. There's a lot to cover with this boss, so we'll get into it now. He's the reason the larger hitbox in JP makes such an impact. In other versions, the player is subject to waiting out the entire duration of the first attack. With the larger hitbox, a quad stack can be done the moment he first becomes vulnerable. This fight is done in 4 hits, but thankfully his time between disappearing and reappearing is short. Quad stack, single, double stack, single. There is a short delay before the double stack, but it's much less time than it would take to wait for an additional hit. My position is used in this fight to influence his position as well as his pattern. With Block 3 being a little bit shorter, this means that we have a little bit more time left over than some of the other stages, and the result is, of course, a longer time countdown. This is number 3 of 7 that will impact the final time for those that are counting. Not much can be said about Block 4 other than it's really just a lot of stairs. I start off the stage with a specific jump to manipulate the Bone Dragon fireballs, allowing me to barely squeak by them on the stairs. Care is put into climbing stairs because, as mentioned earlier, you can easily lose frames by pressing up too early. The cross is used to take care of the Bone Pillar fireballs, and 2 quick whip attacks to take care of the Spear Knight at the top. In my opinion, this is the last block before the game really cranks up the difficulty. This section is just more stairs. The blood skeletons serve no threat and are easily avoided on the way up. At the top is another whip cancel, and the bat is taken out with a cross while moving. Stunning the Spear Knight allows us to pass through his hitbox unharmed and jump out before it becomes active again. Here we see the first damage boost to save time. A 4-frame boost off the bat at the start of stage 12 saves having to walk to the left, up some stairs, and all the way back to the right again. This is where original mode really benefits from knockback. Although the first of many, this damage boost easily saves the most time. This one is actually RTA viable and used in original mode speedruns. At the top of the climb, I stun the glass monster with multiple whip attacks long enough to jump over, and we're onto the boss after jumping over a couple Medusa heads along the way. In the upcoming fight, you see why Medusa is the other main reason for the use of JP over other releases, as she lacks proper iframes. This is exploited after an initial quad stack by tossing crosses over her head and tail during knockback, which drains her health very rapidly. With the easier part of the game behind us, it's time to move on to the back half. It's worth noting that even though this block has the longest countdown post-boss, it's not the shortest. Blocks 1 and 2 actually have a timer that starts at 400, while all remaining blocks start at 500. It wouldn't be Castlevania without the clock tower, where Belmonts come to die. This stage is a mess of moving platforms, spinning cogs, and spikes. More stairs mean more precise climbs. I opted to take a damage boost early on while climbing the stairs, despite it only saving 6 frames, and hoped it wouldn't come back to bite me later. Fun side note, this room really frustrated me as a kid because the stairs at the end are visually obstructed by the HUD. A few jumps to minimize time spent on the cog, and we are out of this vertical nightmare, at least for now. More of the same as I stun the bone pillars here, allowing me to move past them without getting damaged, and minimize the time spent on the cog moving backwards, and maximize the time spent on the one moving forwards. And unfortunately, I am forced to wait here on the swinging pendulum. After a couple tricky platforms, I'm once again forced to wait. The swinging spike hitbox is huge, and damage boosting isn't an option, so it's simply a case of ducking under and jumping over. Once on the other side, I continue to jump to avoid being pushed back. Thankfully, the Fleaman cage that likes to ruin runs with the dagger drop poses no threat here. Up the stairs and into the final section of the tower, which is, of course, another vertical climb. Oh look, more stairs. I knew the previous TAS took damage 3 times in this section, and honestly expected to get burned by my choice to take the damage early on in this block. The big win for original mode here is the damage boost off the cog up onto the ledge. This prevents having to go left and climb the set of stairs. Iframes from the boost allow me past the skeleton and up the stairs, where I'm able to stun the bone pillar to get by. After taking the damage off the fireball, I know there are still plenty of enemies left that could kill me. Thankfully, I'm able to clear the cog with a quick jump, toss across killing the enemies on the rebound, and cancel a downward whip, setting me up for the cross throw on the stairs above. Another cross for the bone pillar, and I escape up the stairs with just 1 frame to spare before the peeping eye would kill me. I didn't expect to save any time on this boss compared to previous strats, but I was actually able to save a small amount. This fight is a quad stack followed by 2 doubles. I was able to save a small amount by forcing her into the bottom right for her second attack, which allowed me to keep her in iframes for the entire fight. If she jumps into the top corners, a small amount of time is lost before the second hit while waiting for her to drop down. After making quick work of the werewolf, it was time to move on to the Tower of Dolls. This is a stage I was really excited to route based on its knockback potential. The start of the stage is just optimizing jumps to avoid fall stun when at all possible. An example of this is the down whip used on the skeleton prior to walking off the ledge. Worth noting, the 3-tile jump prior to the bridge is a 2-frame window. This one is technically optional, but we will see a mandatory one later in block 8. When I reach the crumbling bridge, I time my jumps to manipulate the Medusa head positions along the way. Nothing fancy here, just taking as few jumps as possible to ensure we save frames. Worth noting, this is the only block where the OST changes partway through before actually reaching the boss. After entering the tower, we are greeted with one of my favorite tracks in the game. Once we reached the tower itself, I looked for not only where I could take damage boosts, but which would result in the least downtime between. The first portion of this climb is pretty much just optimizing jumps and killing enemies. Once I encounter the flying dolls, I do leave them alive knowing I want them for damage boosts. They are actually pretty good at staying out of your space as long as you remain mobile and even fly away if you whip close by. I use this to my advantage by manipulating the doll positions on the way with a few attacks. Once I reach the top, the benefit is 3 quick damage boosts. This final section is pretty cut and dry. I minimize jumps and use well-timed crosses, as well as a few whip attacks to take out the mirrors along the way. Enter Doppelganger. He goes down with a simple quad stack, followed by 2 doubles. I think the only thing worth noting in this fight is his iframes seem to be much longer than other bosses. I didn't time it specifically, but I'm going to guess they made his match Simon's because, well, Doppelganger. After he spews glass everywhere, I grab the orb and we're on to block 7. Again, if you guys do prefer this type of stuff in text, there is a link to the submission for TAS videos in the description below. Block 7 kicks off by introducing us to 3 new enemies in the first room. The skeletons that jump up from below take 2 hits to kill, otherwise they explode. At the end of the hall, there's a large 2-headed beast. It has a lot of health, but thankfully we make quick work of it with a cross and a single whip attack. Up top are more exploding skeletons, along with a strange skeleton walker. I keep him stunned so I don't get damaged before finally sending him back to the right prior to me taking the stairs. In the second room, I drop off the ledge to avoid bonking my head with the jump. I cancel a whip attack when jumping up to the stairs so I can easily take out the skeleton above with a moving cross throw opposed to a jump, which essentially saves 1 frame. At the bottom of the stairs, I cancel another whip so I can toss the cross, taking out the 2 skeletons, walking under the first flea man, and whipping down the second. Stage 20 is home to one of 2 damage boosts in this block. Both are actually taken in a range, but there's no real benefit due to the player being sent straight up. In both cases, I was able to get damaged in the direction I was already moving to gain some ground. A couple quick jumps across the platforms, and I'm forced to wait on the spike trap. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find a way to boost right off this trap as I would have liked. A few jumps over the swinging blades leads to a backwards cross throw, This is to prevent the flea man from jumping up and hitting my feet while climbing the stairs. A carefully timed whip allows me to hit the axe knight without actually destroying his shield. The blood skeletons in this area are taken down with a couple whip cancels and quick cross throws. After descending the stairs, we see the second damage boost in block 7. It's taken here off the monster as he activates, and Simon gets sent to the left. The cross throw is used to stun the monster after it rebounds. This prevents further damage from him as I climb the stairs. In the final portion of the screen, the enemies and projectiles actually play nice, allowing me to get by with just 2 jumps prior to entering the door. Whip attacks and crosses are used to stun or kill the enemies throughout stage 21. The backwards cross is used prior to the stairs to prevent damage from the blood skeleton, knowing I will have to take damage at the top of the stairs. The downward whip on the last bone pillar on the bottom not only allows me to pass through it without damage, but also sets up the cross throw on the stairs. This top section is pretty simple, just minimizing jumps and taking care of the Medusa heads and axe knights as we make our way onto the death fight. I would be lying if I said I actually understood how his iframes work. I start the fight by stacking 3 crosses and a whip, but am able to get in another whip attack before the iframes kick in. I stack 2 more crosses once he becomes vulnerable, putting him back into iframes, and finish him off with a stacked cross and whip. As per usual, I ditch all of my extra hearts before and after the fight, with a couple fun cross tosses before the orb grab. With death down, it's on to the final block. This is it, the final leg of our journey. Here's where it all comes together. The enemies in this stage are more aggressive and placed closer together, which makes it more difficult to manage without stopping or taking damage. The first screen is a series of whip attacks to stun enemies as well as set up cross throws while moving. The crossbow knights here are taken down fairly easily, but every other knight in this stage is a pain due to high health and how they attack. On the second screen, I drop down before jumping. This is to avoid getting stopped up in the ceiling. It took a lot of care to manipulate the shield enemy not to reflect my cross, allowing it to hit the 2 enemies behind him. This screen was an absolute nightmare to get right because the shield knight is very determined to stay in front of you and attacks upward if you try and jump over him. On the third screen, I thought I was in for a break, but how wrong I was. The crossbow knights aren't bad, but the ball and chain knight is terrible. I'm barely able to make the jump up onto the platform and jump again to avoid his attack. In addition, if he's being stunned while jumping over his attack, it will stay extended and you will land on it, so everything is timed carefully. A damage boost in the flaming chandelier room saves a modest 6 frames. More damage boosts off the environment here would have been nice, but unfortunately it seems like in all cases, waiting for the falling obstacles and jumping over ASAP is faster due to Simon's long hit stun. The big bridge is always scary, but even more so on original mode. If you remember the differences between the modes, you will remember a ranged gets a 3-frame buffer to jump when walking off a ledge that's not present in original. There is an unavoidable 3-tile jump on this bridge. The large bat on the other side is problematic enough, but with no buffer for jumps, that means this is a mandatory 2-frame jump. I fall off the ledge in the Persephone room to avoid fall stun. After taking out the first few enemies, I was able to manipulate when the Persephone above activates with my jump timing over the Black Panther. I'm able to use this to my advantage with a frame perfect damage boost off her attack, which saves me the trip up the stairs to the far left. This jar drop wasn't forced but felt perfect. Not because it does anything, but because if you listen, the sound of me grabbing it lines up perfectly with the music. Final hallway is just enemy management. I need to ensure I have enough hearts for the Dracula fight. This is the only case where having extra hearts at the end won't cost me, but that being said, I will end up using all but one. I actually didn't have enough the first time I reached the fight, but was thankfully able to farm a large heart at the end of the big bridge without actually changing my later inputs. Dracula's phase 1 position is set at the beginning of the stage. In this fight, we are looking for him to spawn by the walls, allowing crosses to hit twice. He doesn't have iframes, so the goal is to hit him as many times with crosses and 2 whip attacks for the first 2 teleports, ending with a stacked whip and cross. Phase 1 sadly cannot be cut down to a 2 cycle. I manipulate a flame pattern in phase 2 by killing certain fireballs in phase 1. Despite him standing in the center, I was able to avoid damage from his final attack and his hitbox with a perfectly timed jump in. TAS timing ends on last input, making this jump in the end of time, hence why I'm not jumping to grab the final orb. I got a good laugh out of the fact that one of his fireballs drops a money bag, and the classic Simpsons fan in me was immediately reminded of this moment. So there you have it, Castlevania Chronicles Original Mode. I hope you guys enjoyed the TAS. This was only my second TAS and first time adding commentary after the fact, but it was a lot of fun and I look forward to exploring other games in 2021. Thanks for watching.